All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to this week's edition of Boundary Systems Webinar Wednesday. My name is Sevi Beaver, and I'm going to be talking about the different Creo simulation software products that are on the market, and we're going to be comparing them. There are three different simulation products that PTC has out right now. So we're going to talk about the differences, the pros and cons, and then we're going to jump into Creo for a brief demonstration. So just as a roadmap, I have an agenda here. I'm going to start with an introduction for myself and for Boundary Systems. And then I'm going to move on, talk a little bit about digital thread. I'm then going to do an overview of our topic. That'll include talking about the benefits of each product. I'm going to talk about kind of a comparison of test results for how these three products actually perform. And then I'm going to do demonstrations, and I'm going to show each of these three products how to use them and some results. I'll finish up with a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to post them in the questions section of GoToWebinar. You'll have the ability there to type in a question. I will take a look at those questions near the end, and I'll be sure to answer them. So just a little bit about me. I've been working at PDS Vision or Boundary Systems since 2019. I come from a mechanical engineering background, and I've used various CAD programs over the last 7 or 8 years, including SolidWorks, AutoCAD, and of course, Creo. I teach classes in Creo for parametric, simulate, detailing and drawing, etc. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about our company. So PDS Vision, formerly Boundary Systems. You all might have noticed that our email addresses have changed to @pdsvision.us as of the 1st of January, the first of the year. So we've officially name changed to PDS Vision. So I do want to take a second and talk about kind of the timeline, how we got here. We were founded in 2006. PDS Vision Group was separately founded in Sweden a couple years later. In 2013, we expanded to South Africa. So we can see the South Africa pin on the map. We expanded to Boundary Systems South Africa. They're still going strong. In 2018, we joined the PDS Vision group of companies. So that includes all of these pins on the map. So what happened on January 1st is we just officially name changed to PDS Vision US, changed our email addresses. But as far as what's going to actually be different, the answer is not much. We still operate in the same way. As far as what we do, we offer consulting, training, implementation, cloud, and help desk services for mostly PTC products. So mostly Creo and Windchill. But as we see on this next slide here, we do support some other products as well that we think perform some role that PTC products is missing. So we support these as well for our customers and implement them. Now I'm going to briefly touch on this digital thread concept. We can see this map here. The inner ring is kind of core capabilities. We're going to talk about simulation here, but we can see CAD. So that would be Creo, CAD management, Windchill. And going out from there, we have different implementations of technology to kind of connect all of these departments. In this particular demonstration, we're just going to be talking about the simulation parts, but we are going to talk about this entire digital thread in many webinars going forward. So if you're interested in how to use these various PTC technologies, how to use them to connect your workspace to kind of modernize the connectivity of a lot of your products, then that will be coming up in webinars to come. Okay, so introductions aside, I'm going to start talking about the various simulation products that we have available through PTC. The three of these products are Creo Simulate, Creo Simulate Live, and Creo ANSYS Simulation. Although they all have very similar names, they are completely separate products with pretty much no relation between them. These all have different technology that kind of power them. So they're all going to do very, very slightly different things. So I'm going to kind of talk about each of these in detail a little bit, and then I'll break down the pros and cons. So starting with Creo Simulate, this has been around the longest. The other two, so Creo Simulate Live and Creo ANSYS Simulation, these have both come out in the last 2 and 3.5 or so years. So they're both relatively new. And Creo Simulate has been around for a very long time. It is a CPU-based tool, and it includes a PTC mesher and solver. So essentially the mesher and the solver was developed by PTC itself, developed, maintained, updated throughout the years. It is a P element solver. That's kind of technically how it runs, how it calculates various things. And one of the benefits here is it has a lot of capability since it's been around for so long. It supports nonlinear materials, contacts, and analyses, where Creo ANSYS Simulation does not support that yet. And it also supports various idealizations. So that can include a 2D shell feature to simplify model geometry, a 2D beam feature, 2D spring feature, etc. And these are all things that are not included in Creo ANSYS Simulation. It is accuracy dependent to some degree. So you do want to ideally create your models using absolute rather than relative accuracy. It'll still work if you use relative, but it'll just not be as accurate as if you used absolute accuracy. The last bullet point I want to touch on, at least right now, is that it includes Creo Simulate Lite. This is not Creo Simulate Live. This is, again, a completely different thing than Live, just to make matters of naming even more confusing. But Creo Simulate Lite is basically the free version of Creo Simulate. It's very, very limited in its use. I believe you can only have a mesh of 200 elements total or something, so you're limited to very small and simple models. The reason I don't like to talk about this is Creo Simulate, at least at the base level, is included in a lot of Creo licenses nowadays. So as a result, Creo Simulate Lite is increasingly irrelevant, especially as time goes on and more people are getting access to Creo Simulate. I believe currently Creo Simulate is included in the Design Essentials package with Creo. So a lot of people do have access to this. So Creo Simulate Lite, with its very limited capabilities, is kind of increasingly irrelevant. I'm now going to move on to Creo Simulate Live. This was developed and added with Creo 5. So that was about between 3 and 4 years ago. And rather than being a CPU-based tool, it is a GPU-based tool. I'd like to mention that right off the bat because it does have very specific hardware requirements to be run. In order to run this, you do have to have an NVIDIA CUDA-enabled graphics card. If you're not sure, then you can find various lists online. One list from PTC of which graphics cards are supported, and additionally a tool that you can run on your computer that will tell you if your computer is able to run this. But that's just something to mention right away. It does have very steep hardware requirements. So Simulate Live, again, pretty new. The main difference here is that this is actually a meshless solver. So it does not use a mesh. It does use an ANSYS solver. So it's supported by ANSYS technology, kind of behind the scenes. And the main benefit here is that it's going to run much, much faster than either of the other two simulation tools. Creo Simulate Live is built right into Creo, and it's made with the intention of engineers being able to very quickly analyze design changes. So if I add a feature to my model, how is this going to change my simulation results? We can figure that out, at least a general ballpark, really, really quickly with Simulate Live. It has both FEA and CFD support. And a couple disadvantages: it may struggle with large assemblies containing small parts. We can see an example of that below with that image. This is a very large structure, but it has a lot of these very small intersections. This is the kind of thing that Creo Simulate Live might struggle with. One more thing, it only supports the first 6 modes for modal analysis. So if you're wanting to do a really in-depth modal analysis where you want to analyze modes above 6, this is not going to be a tool that lets you do that. Finally, we have Creo ANSYS Simulation. This is a new tool with Creo 7, so that was between 1 and 2 years ago. It is another CPU-based tool, just like Creo Simulate. It uses the ANSYS mesher and solver, and the version of that is dependent on the version of Creo. But if you have Creo 8, it's using 2021 R1 ANSYS mesher and solver. As far as limitations with this, the main limitations come from this tool being very new. As I mentioned, it is new with Creo 7, and as a result, it doesn't have quite the amount of features as Creo Simulate. It currently only supports linear simulations, so you cannot run any of the nonlinear simulations with nonlinear materials that you can do in Creo Simulate. Additionally, this does not yet support idealizations like shells and beams. So it is a little bit more limited than Creo Simulate in terms of the amount of features that we have access to. It's an H element solver. So again, that's kind of how it runs behind the scenes. And it has to do with how the mesh is refined. So just a different method between Creo ANSYS Simulation and Creo Simulate. Neither is necessarily better, they just operate differently. Creo ANSYS Simulation is also accuracy dependent. Absolute accuracy is once again recommended, and even more strongly in this case. All right, so I'm going to move on to some examples. That's going to let us see how these different simulation software perform, and that'll let us analyze the pros and cons of each. So our first example is a simple beam with a force applied on the end of that beam. So that beam represented in blue, we can see a cross section of that on the right side. This is just going to be a perfectly square beam that's 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters. We're assuming this is steel, and we're applying 1 kilonewton of force on the end of that beam. The beam is 1 meter long, and with all of those assumptions, we're able to calculate what the stress and deflection of this beam is going to be. So basically just our pen and paper calculations are shown here as the theoretical results. We have max stress 48, max deflection 3.2. Now, when we set this up and actually run the simulation in our 3 simulation software, we can see the results that we get. So we have Creo ANSYS Simulation, Creo Simulate, and Creo Simulate Live. And we're going to want to take note to these percent error columns for each of these Creo software. We'll notice that in this test case, Creo ANSYS Simulation has the lowest percent error in both categories. So we'll see in the max displacement calculation and max stress calculation, Creo ANSYS Simulation is doing the best. We'll see that Creo Simulate is also doing very well, particularly with max displacement. And if we look at Creo Simulate Live, we'll notice it's still doing very well with max displacement, but it's not doing quite as well with max stress. So what we can take from this, all of these 3 simulation software are very good when it comes to calculating mass displacement. The displacement calculations are going to be very accurate regardless of what you use. Additionally, max stress is going to be fairly accurate regardless of what you use. The worst is Creo Simulate Live, which makes sense because it runs the quickest. And the best happens to be Creo ANSYS Simulation. The next example, we have a very large assembly. We can see that this is an engine that is essentially constrained to not move on one surface. And we're going to apply various moments and forces to this that will model how this engine is actually going to behave when it's running. So this is a very large assembly. There are lots of little components that are going to be used here. So the simulation is going to take a very long time to run. So this comparison here just compares Creo Simulation Live with Creo Simulate. So again, Live is the one that's built right into Creo. It runs a little bit faster with that meshless technology. And we'll note that these results are pretty close to each other. We can see that they're 6% difference with displacement and 12% difference with the stress calculations. But as far as time that it takes to run, Creo Simulation Live runs this simulation in about 20 seconds, whereas Creo Simulate takes 3 hours. And that is a completely ridiculous difference. This example really shows the benefit of Creo Simulation Live. If you were to make any sort of change to this engine assembly that would require you to run another simulation, that could set you back a very large amount of time using a traditional simulation software. Using Creo Simulation Live lets you evaluate your changes essentially in real time. So that's the benefit, and the drawback is that in certain situations, it's not going to be quite as accurate. Lastly, I have a thermal heat transfer example. So we have a cross section that's assumed to be infinite length. We have two different temperatures on either side of that. And we're going to calculate the heat transfer across the beam. We can see that the percent error for Creo ANSYS and Creo Simulate are both identical in this case. They're very, very low. Creo Simulate Live is about 10% off. So you're in the right ballpark once again, but not quite as accurate as our other two simulation tools. Lastly, one more example. We have a modal example. So this is once again just an idealized example. We calculate what the frequency theoretically should be using a pen and paper. Then we're going to see the percent error across these three simulation software. In this case, once again, Creo ANSYS is the most accurate, followed very closely by Creo Simulate, and then lastly, Creo Simulate Live. But we'll notice that all three of these are very, very good. The percent error is very low on all three. And from that, we can infer that for modal analyses, all three of these do very well. All right, so I'm now just going to jump back to this initial table that I have set up. Talks about the three, just do a little recap and talk about pros and cons. So Creo Simulate, once again, has been around the longest, and it has the most tools available. We can analyze nonlinear materials. We can use 2D idealizations. And this has completely been developed by PTC over the years with PTC technology. The pros are a very large feature set, very accurate simulation capabilities. The cons are that it's not nearly as fast as Simulate Live, and in some cases, it does not get quite as accurate results as Creo ANSYS. Moving on to Simulate Live, the benefits of this are that it runs extremely quickly. That's the main benefit of this, and it is a very huge benefit. As we saw, a simulation that would take 3 hours on either of the other two might run in 20 seconds on Creo Simulate Live. That is the main benefit. The disadvantages are, in some situations, the accuracy will be lower. That'll include thermal analyses. It'll include structural analyses where you're worried about max stress, especially in large assemblies with small components. So you do have, in theory, slightly less accurate results, but if you're looking for a quick ballpark, it's going to be very, very, very useful. The other disadvantage, and I think this is a pretty big one, is that it requires a fancy graphics card to run. So you can figure out if you're able to run this. If you can, great. If you can't, if you're going to upgrade in the future and you're interested in this, you'll want to pay attention to your graphics card. Lastly, we have Creo ANSYS Simulation. This is the newest tool. It was established first with Creo 7. It uses complete ANSYS technology, so they're ANSYS Mesher and Solver. The benefits of this are that it generates very accurate results. It uses this very powerful ANSYS Mesher and Solver, and in most tests done, it's getting the best results. The cons of Creo ANSYS are that it is new, and it lacks some of the features that Creo Simulate has. This is very frequently updated, so with each new version of Creo, we are going to hopefully get new features with Creo ANSYS Simulation. As far as an actual roadmap, as far as I know, nothing has been confirmed, but PTC is actively developing Creo ANSYS at the fastest rate. I would say they're adding new things to it constantly. So it does seem that in the future, this is going to probably get a lot of that capability that Creo Simulate has that it currently lacks. So again, to summarize, Creo Simulate been around the longest, has the biggest tool set. Simulate Live allows you to run simulations very, very quickly. ANSYS Simulation is a very powerful new tool that is getting very frequent updates, but is still missing some features that Simulate has. All right, now I'm going to jump into Creo, and I'm going to show each of these three tools. So here I'm just in Creo Parametric, and the first thing I'm going to point your attention to is this Live Simulation tab. Clicking this tab in Creo, we can see that Creo Simulate Live is built right into Creo Parametric, and it allows us to, as I said, pretty seamlessly make changes to our model and rerun a simulation. In my graphics window, my constraints and my loads are represented by these arrows. So through these white arrows, we can see this model is constrained on these bottom surfaces to not move. And a force is going to be applied across this top surface. I can then run this simulation, and we'll see that I can very, very quickly get some results generated in just 3 or 4 seconds. If I switch over to deformation, we can see how this thing is going to deform. So this makes sense. When we apply force here, it's going to bend the most on the right end over here. So this is a live simulation, or Creo Simulate Live. Again, built right into Creo and runs very, very quickly. If I want to access either of the other simulation tools, I have to do that through applications. So I'm going to go to applications, and we can see that I have ANSYS Simulation and Simulate, which is Creo Simulate, which are my other two tools. So I'm going to open up Creo Simulate, and I actually already ran an analysis. I mentioned before that these analyses take a lot longer to run. So I'm not going to run this at this time, but it did take about 10, 15 minutes, just for you to get an idea of how much longer it takes to run in either Creo Simulate or Creo ANSYS. If I open up the results here, so this is the results of the simulation I ran previously. You can see I can take a look at let's see. Hopefully it opens for me. So it looks like there was an error and my results are gone. So I'm just going to rerun this study real quick. And I'm just going to do single pass adaptive this time, so it'll run a lot faster. There we go. That's very odd. That's very interesting. I'm not sure why this results window would be failing on me. It's telling me my file is corrupted. Oh, here we go. That's so weird. I don't know why it worked that time, but I'm glad it did. But we can see the results here from Creo Simulate. The exact same conditions. And we're able to see how these results look. It's not too different, but it opens up in this separate results window. In theory, these Creo Simulate results are going to be more accurate. The simulations take longer to run. And main benefit is just the amount of tools that we have available here in Creo Simulate. If you look at the ribbon, we have a whole lot of tools that we can create. We have all kinds of mesher settings, so we can look at our actual mesh. You can see that there. We can also create idealizations, contact interfaces, weld idealizations, etc. I mentioned nonlinear materials as well. If you're trying to do some kind of simulation with nonlinear materials, you can only do that here in Creo Simulate. Okay. Finally, I'm going to jump into ANSYS Simulation. First thing to note, we do have quite a bit as far as constraints and loads. We have more capability than Creo Simulation Live, but less capability than Creo Simulate. We have, again, the ability to do gravity, temperature, pressure, etc. But we're not able to do any nonlinear simulation. We're lacking 2D idealizations. So we do have access. If I look at my mesh, we do have access to oh, there we go. We have access to the ANSYS mesh. So just like Creo Simulate, I can go ahead and generate a mesh. This is using ANSYS Mesher. And when this is done, I'll be able to view our mesh just like I can do in Creo Simulate. And there we go. So we do have Mesher available. We have interfaces. We have some additional constraints and loads, but the capability of this, since it's a newer software, is a bit limited. We are getting very accurate results with this simulation software, though, in most situations. Okay, so that concludes my demonstration. If you're interested in learning more about any of these three simulation programs, we do offer classes for all three of these. These include on-site, in-center, so in our training center in Cleveland, Ohio, or virtually. Since COVID, we started doing virtual classes. Nowadays, we continue to do virtual classes along with in-person classes as well. So if you're interested in learning anything about these, feel free to contact us. Now I'm going to open it up to questions. Looks like we do already have some questions that have came in. And if you have additional questions, then you can go ahead and submit them now. So first question, I thought I saw a webinar for Creo Simulation Live, not Lite. The live shows instant FEA update due to the GPU. And it seems like the overview was aligned with live and not Lite. Could you confirm? So that's correct. I'm going to jump back to this table, just talk about this briefly. Essentially, that is correct. We can just essentially forget Lite even exists. So this Creo Simulation Lite down here, it is pretty irrelevant. It is just the free version of Creo Simulate. Now, as far as the tool that shows instant FEA update, and that's due to this meshless technology, this is Creo Simulate Live. So yes, that is completely correct. Creo Simulation Live is the one that's going to use your GPU. It's going to work much faster. That's not Simulate Lite. Simulate Lite is pretty irrelevant. All right, next question. Which of these tools are included with Creo Essentials, if any? So the answer is Creo Simulate. This, I believe, is included with Creo Essentials, Creo Design Essentials. There are different tiers of Creo Simulate. So the Creo Simulate base license is included in some packages, but there is an advanced simulation license that includes some other things, like modal analysis, things like that. That kind of comes at a different tier that you have to purchase separately. These other two tools, so Simulation Live and Creo ANSYS, as far as I know, those are not included in any packages. Both of those tools on the right have to be bought separately. Here we have a question. With Creo 7 being the latest stability version, can some Creo ANSYS simulation options available in 8 be added to it? For example, ANSYS Measure and Solver. And does Creo ANSYS Simulation come free with Creo 7, or is it an added module? So to answer that question, I'm going to break that down into several parts. First, with Creo 7 being the latest stability version, I'm actually not really aware of that. As far as I know, Creo 8, I think we're on 8030 or something like that. I think that's, as far as I know, pretty stable. I haven't really heard that Creo 8 is unstable for any reason. But the rest of that question, can Creo ANSYS simulation be used in Creo 7? The answer is yes. The ANSYS Measure and Solver is included in Creo 7, the Creo 7 ANSYS simulation package, rather. It's just going to be the previous version, so it's not the 2021 R1, but it is still ANSYS Measure and Solver. This can be used in Creo 7, yes, but it does require an additional license. Creo ANSYS is not, as I said, bundled with any other package as far as I know. So if you're interested in running this on Creo 7, that is definitely possible. It's just an additional license. Next, we have a question. Is there a way to export a simulation from any of these three softwares to an ANSYS project file after setting up all the constraints, load, simulation info? If you want a more detailed analysis without having to start over entirely in ANSYS. Yes, we can do that. So that would be in Creo ANSYS Simulation. So if I just jump over to applications here, so this is in Creo ANSYS, and I can do file save simulation data, and I'm able to save this as ANSYS project. That way I can save this out. As you said, do a lot of the setup here, send it over to ANSYS for some additional analysis. That's only available in Creo ANSYS, not in either of the other two. All right, let's see. Does Creo ANSYS Simulation offer CFD? Not at this time. Nope, not at this time. Next question. Any CFD capability in Simulate? What version of Creo is required to use the different softwares? I know it says new with Creo 5 and 7 for Live and ANSYS, but I wasn't sure if earlier versions are capable of running these. So the answer is yes, unfortunately. Those are the versions of Creo also required to run those specific software. So you're not going to be able to use Simulate Live with a version prior to 5, and you're not going to be able to use Creo ANSYS with a version prior to 7. One thing to check would be if your company has the ability for you to go on to a newer version. So what I'm saying is a lot of times companies will be on Creo 3 kind of as a company, but your licenses are actually allowing you to go up to Creo 8. So something you could do is potentially download a newer version just to use these extensions. But again, that's not a great solution most of the time. So yeah, you would have to get a newer version if you'd want to use either of those two. We do have Creo Simulate available in older versions of Creo. So Simulate would work completely fine with Creo 3. Now, as far as CFD capability in Simulate, I am about 95% sure that the answer to that is yes. I personally haven't done CFD in Creo Simulate, so I'm not able to confirm that. So I'll have to reach out to you to 100% confirm that we do have CFD capabilities in Simulate. I do know that this is in Simulate Live, and I have done some fluid flow in Creo Simulate Live. And I know that this capability is not in Creo ANSYS Simulation. As far as whether it's in Creo Simulate, I'm going to have to double check, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. Let's see. And that is all of the questions we have. So thank you, everybody. If you do have any additional questions in the future, feel free to reach out to me. So that's going to be sbeaver@pdsvision.us. Again, since January 1st, new email addresses. If you're interested in licenses for these specific programs, then you can contact sales@pdsvision.us, and also for training as well. If you'd like to find this webinar again, you can always check this out on our YouTube channel. This whole thing was recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube within usually a day or two. So you can just search Boundary Systems YouTube on YouTube or Google, and you can find a whole bunch of webinars we've done in the past. I want to say hundreds of webinars on various PTC products, lots of good info there. The question, when will these slides be available? I think that kind of answers that. You can find the webinar on YouTube, but if you are interested in this specific slide deck, you can email me at sbeaver@pdsvision.us, and I will be able to send over that slide deck. Okay, that concludes this week's edition of Webinar Wednesday. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending and for your questions. and I hope you have a great rest of the week.